Ngā mana, ngā reo, i ngā karanga tanga maha o te wā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ki ngā mana whenua, ko Taranaki Whānui, Te Ateawa, ko Ngāti Toa Rangatira, tēnā koutou. Nō ku te hanare ki haere mai ki te whakanuia tēnei huihuinga whakahirihira. Anei oku kaupapa mātua mō te maru mahuki, mahi tika, mahi tahi, mahi ake. Nō reira, ngā manaakitanga ki runga i a tātou katoa, tēnā koutou, huri noa i te whare, tēnā rā tātou katoa. To say, when I see that photo, I haven't seen that particular photo for some time. My younger brother, who is a software engineer, has somehow, through technology I don't understand, created a deep fake using that photo of me singing Rick Astley songs, which is deeply incriminating and has made me think seriously about the need for an ombudsman in the social media area for complaints. I was slightly traumatised when I saw that photo come up. It's a real privilege to be standing here today, to have the task of delivering the opening address at your conference. And I have quite a substantive speech that covers a number of things that are going on in the sector. And I hope you will follow as much of that as you can on the way through, because I think it's really important to acknowledge the success of the sector and the challenges that you are all facing right now. And I'll touch on some of those. Stating the obvious, it's really good to be here, kanohi ki te kanohi, face to face, after last year's conference was cancelled, as many events were last year. It is great to have the opportunity to get together. We've learnt to work in new ways during the COVID period. We've gone online a whole lot more when it makes sense. But it's also nice to gather together from time to time and have those conversations that are difficult to have sometimes in other environments. I do want to acknowledge your chairperson, Chelsea, and the hard work of those volunteers who have brought this conference together. Adaptability is a perfect theme for this conference. The challenges presented over the last 18 months have been unprecedented, as indeed has the use of the word unprecedented. As an industry, though, through that difficult time, you have powered through. You've gritted your teeth, you've grown jobs, and you have grown revenue. And at the same time, you've achieved international recognition. And I know that you'll be familiar with many of the numbers I'm about to cover off, but they're too impressive not to repeat. Interactive game development earned $324 million in revenue in the year to March 21, which is up a whopping 59% on the previous year. You supported 750 well-paid jobs. On top of that, I'm told that in the last year, actually another 100 full-time jobs have been added to the sector. And that was during the year where COVID has ravaged the world, where our borders have been closed for periods of time, and competition for tech talent has been extremely high. And that means that the game development industry earned revenue of around $432,000 per employee in the 2020 financial year, which is phenomenal. And 96% of that is export revenue. There are very few industries that could claim that, and this is low or no carbon exports. And growth in digital exports, therefore, is pretty much unconstrained by natural resources. You don't have to pay shipping or processing costs. Software as a service can rapidly scale up our exports. You all know this, but that's part of what's adding to these phenomenal figures. And you people in this room are the people that have made that happen. Your creativity, your unique talents, and the fact that you are developing unique, high-value intellectual property. And investors are recognising that. Ninja Kiwi, the most recent example, bought by Swedish company NTG earlier this year for over $200 million. And last year, Finnish giant Supercell invested $2.8 million in New Zealand-based startup Studio 2Up. Now, I know that Umurangi Generation was made in Australia by Naftali Faulkner. However, I figure if Australia can claim Crowded House and Pavlova, we will absolutely claim a game by a Māori developer that features te reo, Tau Māori concepts and imagery. And with that in mind, I would like to extend my warmest congratulations to Mr. Faulkner and Umurangi Generation for winning the Seamus McNally Grand Prize at the 23rd Independent Games Festival Awards. Another example of global success is Flesh and Blood, a card trading game developed by Legend Story Studios in Auckland. With around 200,000 global players, Flesh and Blood beats some of the biggest toy companies in the world to become the #1 selling aftermarket card game in the United States this year. And I'm confident that all of you understand why, as the Minister for Communications and the Digital Economy, interactive game development is exactly the sort of industry that gets me excited. Government's goal is to transform the economy into one that's more productive, sustainable, and inclusive to benefit all New Zealanders. And interactive game development is just the type of industry that achieves all of those things. For a small country trading a long way from markets, high quality, sustainable, low carbon footprint jobs are evidenced in this particular industry in a way that is really blindingly obvious. To be successful, though, you have to compete against other international studios, although we have a growing market, let's say that, and you require strong international connections. Those are two of the crucial factors that are identified by the Productivity Commission as crucial to lifting New Zealand's productivity. Digital creative jobs are not vulnerable to automation and are areas where we expect strong future growth. Game development skills are also transferable to other industries, including film, but also medical and educational technology, emergency planning, agri-tech, and modern manufacturing. One way that government is helping our economy to transform is through industry transformation plans, known as ITPs. These are long-term sector development plans developed in partnership between government and industry. The interactive games development sector is included within the Digital Technologies Industry Transformation Plan. And this ITP is being developed by MB and NZ Tech. And Stephen Knightley, I've had the pleasure of chatting with a bit this morning, is on the reference group for that ITP. There are 7 work streams in the ITP, Digital Technologies ITP. 3 of those, skills exports and Māori tech success, are particularly relevant to interactive game development. And the work streams are at different stages of development, but each will have associated actions, and we'll monitor our progress against those actions over time. I expect the ITP to include some actions specifically targeted at supporting the growth of the interactive game development sector. And I will be releasing a draft of that ITP in the next month or so, and can I strongly encourage all of you to submit on that draft and give feedback, please. One thing that I have been very encouraged by my time in this role is the willingness and active nature of support for new studios. Many of you go out of your way to support the development of new entrants into the industry. We've started one action that will be in the ITP, and that is a study into the investment gaps and opportunities for New Zealand studios wanting to grow. I'm pleased to announce that MB has contracted Nordicity and Jason Della Rocca to undertake this work. As leading global experts in the development of games studios, industries and clusters, those names are probably even more familiar to you than they are to me. I'm very much looking forward to reading and learning from their analysis and the recommendations to support your growth. I expect that report to be completed by the end of the year. New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, NZTE, is also actively working to help studios grow and export. Through their networks domestically and internationally, customers have access to industry specialists and regular one-on-one support to navigate challenges to growth and export journey, as well as sector-specific content and specialised information. A recent example is a webinar series hosted by NZTE, which provided consumer insights and information on publishing rules and regulations relevant to China's gaming industry. And as well as helping gaming customers to publish in international markets, NZTE's investment team works with them to help with the capital raising process. NZTE and New Zealand Private Capital supported the New Zealand Game Development Association to run a game investment event held in Auckland in June. The event was oversubscribed, and I'm really delighted to hear that 100 investor and studio representatives attended on the day. The event brought together investors who were interested in learning more about game development, industry opportunities, and studio representatives who shared their founders' journeys. I'm also very proud, and no speech could be complete without it, of the Code Initiative in Dunedin, and not just because I'm the local MP. I had something to do with the development of the initiative when I was in opposition, and I do want to acknowledge Rocketworks, Runaway, and others who I spoke to in the process of designing that initiative. It's changed and matured since I had to do with it for the better, but I'm very attached to it and see the real potential in it. And I'm also excited about it because the government has invested $10 million through that Code Initiative and via the Provincial Growth Fund actually to fund the Code Initiative. And that Code Initiative has a vision of growing a $1 billion video game development industry in New Zealand to deliver new economic growth and highly skilled, sustainable employment. No pressure, Tim. Close to $1 million in grants either have been or will be delivered to Dunedin-based studios through that initiative. And I was honoured to be asked to announce the first 7 successful grant applicants in February this year. And I know from what I was able to see there that the quantity, the variety and the quality of initiatives is incredibly encouraging. There was a lot of competition for those grants, and that was from the first round. It really exceeded expectations. I was especially impressed there to also see the variety and the sense of identity that was being conveyed through the games. The proposed games were all very clearly from Aotearoa. The focus of several games on Māori culture and knowledge and the Ōtepoti environment is a core part of that in the games that were there. And while we're canvassing all of those things that are going on in support of the industry, I couldn't not mention Pickpock, New Zealand's largest studio based here in Wellington and one of our oldest, established in 1987. There's huge potential for your industry to support economic growth in our regions and for our Māori and Pacific communities whose unique cultural perspectives can provide key points of difference in new games. Game development studios can succeed anywhere there's talented, skilled people and high volume, high speed internet. Government has also invested heavily in infrastructure that we will need to grow our digital economy. $1.3 billion has been invested since the ultra-fast broadband program began, and it's on track for completion by the end of next year. By then, 87% of New Zealand's population will have access to fibre, and New Zealand will have moved up the OECD country rankings for population coverage with fibre available, and that's from 11th in 2016 through to the top 5 by the end of the program. And our speeds, I get reports on this from time to time, are top 3 currently in the OECD. In addition, the Rural Broadband Initiative Phase 2 has improved connectivity for more than 62,000 rural households and businesses, and government's also in the process of investing $65 million to support the delivery of programs targeting rural communities. Our 5G and fibre network provide the base infrastructure you need. The Digital Technologies Industry Transformation Plan will give industry and government a shared long-term direction. And again, please can I encourage you to support on the draft. This is a message I will repeat. Through that, we will build a pipeline of new studios as well through code, and we'll make sure we have quality information to inform our decisions on other actions government and industry can take to grow a successful, enduring interactive games development ecosystem in New Zealand. But I know that game development isn't all about just enjoying international recognition and millions of dollars in revenue. So I also want to, as I signalled, acknowledge some of the challenges that you are facing. And one of the big elephants in the room is the Australian Federal Government's announcement of a 30% tax offset for local and international studios that develop digital games in Australia. And while the criteria for that have yet to be developed, the Australians have signalled it a wee way out. The Australian Government has said that the tax offset will be available from the middle of next year. So I guess I want you to know that we are aware of that, and in particular Stuart Nash, my colleague, the Economic Development Minister, and me are concerned about the impacts of that announced Australian tax offset. Successful game development does rely on attracting and retaining highly skilled people, and such talented people are highly mobile and in demand across the world. I'm not going to pretend New Zealand doesn't have some unique and attractive properties, but we do have to acknowledge the context we're in. And understandably, accordingly, both individuals and studios will take the Australian incentive into account when making decisions about where to make their next investment. And that situation, of course, right now is also exacerbated by our closed international borders. And so when the Trans-Tasman bubble opens between Australia and New Zealand, it effectively creates a shared pool of talent. And we will inevitably be competing with Australia for skilled employees. So I will be discussing further the impacts of that Australian tax offset with the Game Developers Association, and I know that they have some suggestions for ways that New Zealand could respond. And I do expect my officials to work closely with the NZGDA to understand the impacts of the tax offset. The Digital Technologies ITP, having said that, it's very good in my view that it's going on right now because it provides the framework for us to identify and develop New Zealand-specific initiatives that respond to that challenge that we are now facing. I will, of course, in my role, ensure that I am well across those conversations as they continue and how that develops, and look forward to communicating with you as we find the solutions that work for New Zealand. Another challenge I'm aware that you're all facing is the impact of COVID-19 and the resulting border closure. And that impacts on your ability to recruit internationally. And the bar has been set very high for bringing workers to New Zealand while the border's closed. Employers have to show that a worker has unique experience and technical or specialist skills not readily obtainable in New Zealand. And the technical definition for that is that skills are considered not readily obtainable if there's no workers in New Zealand who can do the role, or there is a limited pool of available workers who can do the role and they're not available to the employer. There's recently been some work that NZ Tech's done on that I actually asked them to kind of try and bring some examples out, and I do want to acknowledge that work and thank, again, studios and folks here who have submitted on that, because it's very hard to have the conversation when there's a general impression without specific examples. We're now empowered with some specific examples to take away where, at least at first blush, it looks like there's been some inconsistent interpretation of how that is applied. What I do want to say is that whatever evidence employers can provide to strengthen the argument for those skills not being available in New Zealand and the economic benefits of bringing the individual in will strengthen the application. But I can also advise that ministers are actively considering our border settings to allow more temporary visa holders to enter New Zealand when conditions allow. And I also have to recognise that changes will not be happening as quickly as many would like, but government's first priority has to be to keep New Zealand safe in the COVID context. As I draw to a close, I want to thank you once again for the invitation to speak with you this morning. Despite the challenges that exist, I am very confident that New Zealand's interactive game development industry will continue to go from strength to strength. And I want to assure you that I'm very committed to working with you and meeting with you as we together plan to continue to grow that success. Now, the conference, I understand, runs till Saturday, and you've got a packed schedule of workshops, professional development opportunities, and importantly, networking ahead. So I hope you all have the stamina to enjoy all of that, get the most out of it. I will be able to stay for a few minutes, but I wish I could stay a little bit longer, I have to confess. Have a meeting with the Digital Council next. I have lots of interesting other things to do, but I suspect you're going to be having a pretty good time here. I wish you all the very best for that. Please enjoy yourselves. Please make the most of those networking opportunities that you have here, and I look forward to the ongoing conversation. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, huri noa te whare, tēnā rā, tātou katoa. Kia ora.